To be with her first love Nathan openly. My wife Claire faked a bankruptcy, hoping I'd be the one to ask for a divorce. Later, I gave her exactly what she wanted. But then she lost her mind, showed up at my doorstep on her knees, begging me to take her back. Claire, when are you planning to tell Ethan the truth? Or have you played the part so long you've started believing it yourself? I was walking past the door of private room 1, balancing a tray of drinks, when a voice I knew all too well drifted out. My steps faltered. Through the half-open door, I caught sight of Claire, wearing a deep V evening gown, sitting dead center in the room with a glass of red wine in her hand. Next to her sat Nathan, her first love, along with a few old friends she used to be inseparable with, men and women both. 3 months ago, after Whitmore Group supposedly went bankrupt, Claire told me these people belonged to a world she no longer lived in, and that she'd cut ties for good. I hadn't seen any of them since. But here they were, drinking together like nothing had changed, the same easy intimacy in their faces as back then. My fingers tightened involuntarily around the tray. A sour unease rose in my chest, rooting me to the spot like my shoes had been nailed to the floor. The truth? What truth? A brief silence fell inside the room before Claire's voice cut through, sharp, mocking. Just a few more days. I'm tired of the act anyway. I didn't think he'd be this stubborn, fooled him into thinking I went bankrupt, and he still won't divorce me. Clings like a piece of gum you can't scrape off. It's disgusting. Laughter erupted inside. My heart dropped hard. Whitmore Group's bankruptcy was fake? I heard Ethan's been working 3 jobs these past few months to help you pay off debts. If he finds out it was all a lie, that you faked the bankruptcy just to push him into filing for divorce, oh man, that face is gonna be priceless. No way he knows you're not broke. Otherwise, why would he stick around after finding out you supposedly owe, what, 10 billion? He's probably just putting on a show, working his ass off like that. Trust me, 3 months is his limit. Give it a few more days, he'll crack. They started placing bets on how much longer I'd last. I didn't hear the rest. After dropping the drinks off at a customer's table on autopilot, I went straight to the manager and quit my job. The manager didn't look too happy, couldn't blame him, really. It was only my 3rd day on the job. This was my 4th part-time gig. Claire didn't know about it. Back when I was only working 3 jobs, she told me I was pushing myself too hard. Said I didn't need to kill myself like that she'd work hard too so we could pay off the debt together. I didn't want her to worry, so I never told her. Good thing I didn't. Otherwise, I wouldn't have heard the truth today. Wouldn't have known she despised me enough to come up with a scheme like faking bankruptcy just to make me file for divorce. She must have laughed at me, watching me carefully tuck away every dollar from those jobs into our little savings jar. I laughed at myself too. For believing she'd actually gone bankrupt. For thinking I could work my ass off to help her out of debt. For being stupid enough to imagine spending the rest of my life with her. I left the bar and went straight back to the tiny apartment I was renting. After she told me she'd gone bankrupt, I'd used what little money I had left to find a small place of my own. Claire and I had known each other since we were kids. Our parents were close friends, and we grew up next door to each other. From the time I was little, I'd believed, no, I'd known, that I would marry her one day. And she'd always been good to me. At least, until Nathan came along. The first fight I ever got into was for her. The first time I skipped school, for her. The first time I talked back to my parents, for her. Back then, her eyes always lit up when she looked at me. Once, she asked why I treated her so well. I told her she was my future wife. If anyone messed with her, they were messing with me. She got mad and flustered, told me she'd never marry me. We went to different colleges. On the day I left for mine, she hugged me at the airport and warned me not to look twice at any other girl. She said once we graduated, we'd get married. I kept my promise, turned down every girl who showed interest in me. But somewhere in the middle of her college years, she fell in love with Nathan. We slowly drifted apart until we were nothing but two parallel lines, never touching, never crossing again. I thought that was how it would end. That we'd become nothing more than the most familiar kind of strangers, passing each other someday with only a polite hello. But in my senior year, a car accident took both my parents from me. I started learning how to run the company. Losing my parents and dealing with hostile shareholders felt like two mountains crushing down on me, so heavy I could barely breathe. I wasn't in a good place back then. Claire's grandfather, Grandpa, told her to come back and keep me company. I knew he also had marriage in mind. If I married Claire, Whitmore Group would be behind me, and the shareholders wouldn't dare push me too far. At first, Claire flat out refused. I knew she loved someone else, and I didn't want to tie her down. Then, I don't know what happened between her and Nathan, but they broke up. Those days, she drank constantly. Every time she came home, Grandpa would tear into her, then lock her in the house and forbid her from going out. She'd behave for a few days, then start drinking again. Once, she got drunk and called me, asking me to pick her up. After that, every time she was drunk, she called me. One night, she was so far gone she mistook me for Nathan. That same night, there was trouble at my place, people stirring up chaos, and I was already in a foul mood. I'd been drinking too, and I lost control. Somehow, word of it reached Grandpa. He forced us to get a marriage license. Claire agreed, more out of resignation than anything else. And me, I thought since she and Nathan were over, I could spend the rest of my life making her happy. I swore I'd never let her be hurt again. After we married, she treated me well enough. But after seeing how deeply she'd loved Nathan, I knew that with me, it was more duty than passion. I don't know when she reconnected with him. I just never imagined she'd choose this, faking bankruptcy, to drive me to divorce. To fill her so-called funding gap, I even sold Lancaster Holdings, the company my parents left me, and gave her every cent. And all I got in return was betrayal. If she'd just told me the truth, I wouldn't have clung to her. No matter how much I loved her, I didn't love her enough to throw away my self-respect, to hang on to her shamelessly. It was past midnight when Claire finally came home. She'd changed back into the t-shirt and jeans she'd worn earlier, the cheap stuff I'd bought her from a street vendor. Before, she wore nothing but bespoke suits and haute couture. Clothes like these would never have been in her line of sight. I guess making her live like this for 3 months really was asking too much of her. She looked a little surprised to find me still awake. "Why aren't you in bed? Were you waiting for me? I just finished my shift and brought some pizza. Want a slice?" I watched her quietly, searching her eyes for even a flicker of guilt. There was none. She was perfectly calm. I wanted to ask her if it had been fun, tricking me for 3 whole months. But the question felt pointless. The smell of melted cheese and grease filled the cramped apartment. I lowered my gaze to her hand clutching the pizza, blinked, and forced down the bitterness burning in my chest. "Claire," I said, voice steady, "let's get a divorce." The pizza slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. The smile on her face froze. I didn't understand her expression, shock, confusion, like this was the last thing she expected. She hated me. Shouldn't she feel relieved? Free? So who was she putting on this little performance for now? "Is it because I went bankrupt?" she asked quietly. "You can't stand living like this, so you're giving up?" Something in me almost laughed, but my eyes stung instead. She'd been pretending to be bankrupt for 3 months to push me into doing exactly this. Now that I'd given her what she wanted, she was twisting it, making it sound like I was the one who couldn't handle her being poor. "Claire," I said, my voice sharp enough to cut, "don't you think the way you are right now is disgusting?" I never imagined the girl who once held my hand and swore we'd never be apart would turn into this. It was fine if she loved Nathan. Fine if she wanted to divorce me and be with him. But she shouldn't have used something so filthy, so calculated, to force me into it, just so she could walk to him without a shred of guilt. Her pupils contracted sharply. She grabbed my hand, anger flaring in her eyes, her gaze suddenly fierce and accusing. Ethan, when I went bankrupt, you said no matter how hard life got, you'd stick with me. Now it's only been 3 months, and you're showing your true colors, and you call me disgusting? I yanked my hand free and stepped back, cold and unblinking. I did say that. But the truth is, you never went bankrupt. You staged it, just to make me the villain, so I'd be the one to ask for the divorce, and you could wipe away whatever guilt you felt. Isn't that right? I let the words hang, heavy between us. And if you could do that to me, how is that not disgusting? Claire's face darkened. Her lips parted like she wanted to fight back. But in the end, she said nothing. That face, once it made my heart race. Now, I couldn't stand to look at it for another second. You're moving out tonight, I said flatly. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, I'll see you at the courthouse. I won't take a cent from Whitmore Group. All I want is Lancaster Holdings, the company my parents left me. If I'm not mistaken, when I sold off the Sioux shares, the one who bought them behind the scenes, was you, wasn't it? Claire stayed silent. I'd already run out of patience. I pulled out my phone and called Nathan, told him to come pick her up, and to bring her a change of clothes. Nathan's a smart man. He knew instantly that if I was calling him, it meant the truth was out. It took him less than 30 minutes to show up. He looked immaculate, designer clothes from head to toe, the kind of labels you have to be on a wait list to get. Even the bag holding her clothes was worth $200,000. And there I was, 3 months of grinding through multiple jobs a day, looking at him and feeling more disgusted with Claire than ever. She treated him like gold. If it weren't for her, Nathan could work 10 jobs a day and still never afford the outfit he was wearing, let alone that $200,000 bag in his hand. I turned to Claire, forcing my voice to stay steady. The clothes you're wearing now are from me. Change into what he brought, and go. I walked out of the apartment without waiting for her answer. Not long after, Nathan followed me out. Claire just didn't know how to tell you, he said carefully. That's why she came up with this plan, hoping you'd be the one to file for divorce. We never meant to hurt you. I turned my head, my eyes drifting to his perfectly smooth, unblemished hands. A laugh, low, bitter, escaped me as I held out my own hands to him. Hands covered in cuts, calluses, and the roughness of months of labor. I really want to know, I said, voice razor sharp, how you can even say the words, "We never meant to hurt you." For 3 months, I'd averaged 4 hours of sleep a night. If I wasn't working, I was on my way to work. To save on bus fare, I walked the 5 kilometers between 2 of my jobs every day. At first, my feet blistered so badly I could barely stand. I'd lance the blisters, grit my teeth, and keep going. It took 2 weeks for the skin to harden into calluses so the blisters would stop. And now, all of that, every single sacrifice, was nothing but a joke. From start to finish, Claire and Nathan had been laughing at me behind my back, placing bets on how long it would take before I finally broke and left her. I never imagined that one day, my love for her would become the very weapon she used to hurt me. Nathan bit his lip, eyes dropping to the ground. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "but what Claire and I have, it's true love." The anger I'd been choking down finally broke loose. My gaze on him was ice cold. True love? My voice was low, dangerous. Do you really think wrapping the filth you've done in a pretty ribbon called true love makes it noble? If you could at least admit you're nothing but a coward trying to force me out, I might, just might, have had a shred of respect for you. His brows drew together, and he looked ready to snap back, until his gaze flicked over my shoulder. Claire. His tone shifted, tinged with helplessness, even a trace of wounded pride. He's got it all wrong. Tell him, will you? Tell him we never meant to hurt him. Claire stood there in a red gown that hugged every curve, striking enough to turn heads on any street. She was a far cry from the woman in the $10 t-shirt and jeans I'd bought her just days ago. This was the Claire the world expected to see. And all I felt was how utterly foreign she looked to me now. She stepped in front of Nathan, blocking my view of him. This was my decision, she said, her voice firm. It has nothing to do with Nathan. If you're going to blame someone, blame me. The way she stood there, shielding him like I might harm him, wound something tight around my chest and pulled until it hurt to breathe. See? When it came to the people she cared about, she never let anyone lay a finger on them. And me? I'd been outside that circle for a long time. Maybe it was better this way. At least now I could stop expecting anything from her. Stop clinging to those memories of when things were good. I drew in a slow breath. You're right, I said quietly. I should blame you. The words had barely left my mouth when my hand came up and cracked across her face. The force of it sent a jolt through my palm, leaving it numb. A bright red handprint bloomed across her pale skin. Claire. Nathan caught her, panic flashing in his eyes. His glare at me was pure fury. I flexed my tingling fingers and looked at her without expression. You lied to me for 3 months, I said evenly. That slap makes us even. Ethan, Nathan snapped, don't you think you've gone too far? No one's ever laid a hand on Claire before. I gave him a faint, humorless smile. And has anyone ever told you? No one's ever dared to play me for a fool before either. When my parents were still alive, I was reckless, untouchable. Everyone knew I had a bad temper, and very few people were stupid enough to cross me. After they died in the crash, I'd mellowed out. But that didn't mean I'd lost my edge. Nathan's brow furrowed as if he was about to argue, but Claire caught his arm. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, her face was unreadable. Nathan, let it go, she said. This was my fault. After that slap, we're square. Let's go. Nathan gave me one last, reluctant look, but in the end, he said nothing. He followed her into the dark. By the time I tossed the trash, it was already past 6 in the morning. The sky was pale and awake. I didn't bother sleeping, just went straight to the courthouse to wait for her. At exactly 8 o'clock, Claire pulled up outside. I didn't waste time on small talk. I just turned and walked in. The process was quick. Aside from returning Lancaster Holdings, the company my parents left me, Claire also transferred me several million in cash and 2 villas. I accepted them, then donated the whole lot to a charity foundation. Consider it a good deed. In 6 months, the divorce would be finalized. I was about to leave when she suddenly called after me. About lying to you before. I'm sorry. She said it sincerely, her expression tinged with regret. No need to apologize, I said evenly. Last night, when I slapped you, we were square. Her brows pulled together, like she wanted to say more, until her eyes suddenly froze. I followed her gaze and looked down. I was still wearing the silver ring she'd given me. She'd bought it from a street vendor after I'd sold our wedding bands to pay off debts. I'd called it a waste of money, but she insisted, looking me dead in the eye and promising that one day, she'd replace it with our real rings again. I'd been moved, thought maybe, after all my years of trying, she'd finally fallen for me again. After that, I treated the ring like treasure, polishing it every night before bed. She must have been laughing at me back then. And looking back now, I really was pathetic, believing every word out of her mouth. I lowered my head, slipped the ring off, and tossed it into the trash can beside me. Don't get the wrong idea, I said. I just forgot to throw it out when I was packing last night. Her lips parted slightly, something shadowed crossing her face. I frowned. She looked like she wanted to say something but didn't. What the hell was that about? We were divorced now, shouldn't she be relieved, ready to run to Nathan and celebrate? Why did she look like I owed her money? I ignored her and stepped toward the street to hail a cab. That's when a red Lamborghini slid to a stop right in front of me. Behind the wheel was my friend Nina, her face lit up with a wide grin. "Ethan, congrats on the divorce. You know, you could consider me for the second marriage." Claire's expression soured instantly. She gave Nina a cold stare. "Jokes have limits, Nina. The three of us had been classmates since elementary school. Back then, we were all friends, until Claire and Nina had some kind of falling out. I never knew exactly what happened, but from that point on, they became sworn enemies. Over the years, they'd been at each other's throats in business, snatching clients, leaking dirt, taking turns striking blows. It was a constant back and forth, the kind of rivalry where you half expected someone to end up buried in the desert. I barely kept in touch with Nina, so how she even knew about my divorce was beyond me. Before I could figure it out, Nina's smile sharpened. "Claire, you know damn well I'm not joking." She stepped out of the car and walked straight over to me. "Ethan, maybe it's too soon to say this," she said, "but if you're willing, we can start building something right now." I blinked at her, then let out a quiet sigh. "Nina, I'm busy. I don't have time to play whatever childish game this is." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Who said I'm playing a game?" She stepped closer, her expression turning serious. "I'm telling the truth. I've liked you for 10 years. That hasn't changed." I frowned, skeptical. If she'd said she was doing this just to piss off Claire, I might have believed her. But confessing a decade-long crush? That was news to me. Claire's temper flared. Without a word, she slapped Nina across the face. Within seconds, the two of them were clawing at each other, a full-on street fight. I tried to break it up once, maybe twice. When that failed, I gave up and hailed a cab. It wasn't like they were going to kill each other. Besides, in broad daylight, two women brawling outside the courthouse, me standing there as the lone man in the middle, yeah, that'd be more embarrassing than anything else. Claire moved fast. Within 2 days, she'd handed the company back to me. She didn't show up in person, sent her lawyer instead. Fine by me. I had no interest in seeing her again. Once I took the reins back, my days were packed from dawn to dusk. I was busier than I'd ever been, and, honestly, life felt fuller this way. If it weren't for Nina constantly getting in my way, I might have even called it peaceful. Ever since the divorce, she'd been showing up outside my office building, sometimes inviting me to dinner, sometimes hiding her intentions behind a business meeting just to slip in another hint that she wanted us to be together. 2 weeks of this, and I'd had enough. So when she appeared again one afternoon, I stopped her before she could start. "Nina," I said, "we need to talk." Her lips curled. "Sure. About dating?" I met her eyes, my voice serious. "I don't want you to keep chasing me. Even if you really did like me once, we're adults now, and I've changed a lot." I paused, watching her expression. "Have you ever considered that maybe what you liked wasn't me, but a feeling?" Her brow furrowed. "What feeling?" "You liked the person I was before. But I'm not that guy anymore. Do you understand?" Nina nodded slowly. "I understand. But whether it's who you were or who you are now, I like you. I'm sure I want to spend my life with you. No one else will do." The sincerity in her eyes caught me off guard. My heartbeat stumbled, just for a moment. That's when I realized, she really did like me. But I also knew that even the purest feelings don't always survive time. Once, Claire had looked at me the same way. And in the end, she'd fallen in love with someone else like it was the easiest thing in the world. "Even if you do like me, I didn't get to finish." "Ethan," Nina cut in, "I know you haven't moved on from what happened before. I'm willing to wait. And if you're afraid I'll scheme against you like Claire did, I can transfer everything I own into your name. If I betray you, you can throw me out with nothing. The way she said it, I almost believed she'd do it. Which is exactly why I had to shut it down. No, I said quickly. Listen, I'll be honest with you. I don't like you. Right now, the only thing that matters to me is managing my parents' company. I'm not thinking about relationships. Nina nodded again. I know. But I told you, I'll wait. All I ask is, if you ever decide to date again, let me be first in line. Her gaze was warm, soft, full of something dangerously close to devotion. And for a moment, I couldn't bring myself to say no. After a long silence, I finally told her I hoped she could stop showing up at my office so often, it was starting to interfere with my life. Nina agreed. And true to her word, she didn't appear every day after that. Instead, she started updating me on her life through my phone. Today's meeting was so boring. I want to see you. Business trip. It's raining here in Riverton City. Miss you. I'll bring you something good when I'm back. Missed you so much I can't sleep. Send me a photo. If I can't see you, I might be up all night. Messages like that came so often, I lost count. It took me 3 days to go from baffled to ignoring them entirely. Honestly, I started wondering if someone had hijacked her personality. The Nina I knew wasn't the type to send messages like that. She'd taken over her family business at 23, building a reputation in the corporate world as a no-nonsense leader. Strong. Efficient. Sharp-edged. That image had nothing in common with the sweet, almost flirtatious tone in her recent texts. Still, aside from the constant stream of messages, she had helped me more than once when the company hit rough patches after I took over. And slowly, things between us began to thaw. It felt almost like we were back to the way things had been before she and Claire had their falling out. But I still had no intention of getting involved with her. Love had already burned me once. Once was enough. The next time I saw Claire was 6 months later, on the day the divorce was finalized. When Grandpa found out about it, he was so furious he ended up in the hospital. Claire had no choice but to call me. I didn't want to see her. But Grandpa had always treated me well, and I couldn't ignore that debt. When I reached the hospital room, Claire and Nathan were already there. Nathan looked defeated, and Claire was murmuring reassurances to him. I knocked. It wasn't until Grandpa heard my voice that he told me to come in. That's when I learned the truth. Claire and Nathan had been out shopping when Grandpa happened to spot them together. He'd assumed Claire was cheating, and had publicly torn into Nathan for being shameless enough to break up another man's marriage. Claire couldn't stand seeing me take the blame, so she told Grandpa about our divorce. When I saw he was still worked up, I stepped in quickly, calming him until his breathing evened out and the tension in his shoulders finally eased. Only then did I rise to leave. Ethan, he said, his voice low but searching, this divorce, it really has nothing to do with that Nathan boy? The way he looked at me, worried, protective, hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I wanted to tell him everything. But I couldn't. His heart wasn't strong, and Claire was his favorite grandchild. If he knew the truth, it would crush him, and maybe even do more damage than his body could handle. Besides, it was over. What was the point of digging it up just to hurt him again? So I smiled and nodded. No. She and Nathan got together after we divorced. We ended things peacefully. There was no love left, staying together would have only made us both miserable. I forced the words out lightly. We just weren't meant to be. Anne. I've got a new girlfriend now. When the time's right, I'll bring her to meet you. He studied me for a long moment, then sighed. All right. I'm old now. Whatever happens between you young people, I'll leave it to you. Outside the room, Claire's voice caught me off guard. Thank you. She must have heard everything I'd said. You don't need to thank me, I replied. I didn't tell him the truth because I didn't want to upset him. It has nothing to do with you. She nodded, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. I know. So, you're dating someone? I frowned. That's my personal business. I don't see why I need to tell you. Sorry. Grandpa's calm now. I've got things to handle at the company, so I'll be going. I didn't wait for her answer. After that day, Claire and Nathan stopped hiding. Their relationship became public, loud, even. I tried not to pay attention, but they were constantly making headlines, and my employees would bring it up whether I wanted to hear it or not. Nathan loved the ocean, so she dropped millions on a beachside villa just so the first thing he'd see each morning was the waves. His health wasn't good, so she hiked all the way to the top of the Himalayas, carved his name into the rock, and prayed for him. None of it surprised me. When Claire loved someone, she gave them everything she had. Just like when we were young, when I was sick, and she'd run through a thunderstorm to bring me my favorite cake, coaxing me gently to take my medicine. Or how, even though she couldn't swim, she still went diving with me to see that unreal, shimmering world beneath the sea. Or how, despite hating crowds, she'd wrap her arms around me in the middle of a noisy street and tell me she loved me. Young love burns bright and pure. But it's fleeting. Once the fire burns out, all that's left is ash. And the wind carries it away. I first spotted Claire's car outside my building by accident, on a stormy night. Thunder woke me, and I remembered I'd left the living room window open. I got up to shut it, and just as I reached for the latch, lightning split the sky. In that flash of white, I saw it, parked down below, a red Ferrari I knew all too well. Claire's. I frowned, shut the window, and went back to bed without a second thought. But then I noticed a pattern. 3, sometimes 4 nights a week, her car was there again. Once or twice could be coincidence. This many times? She was doing it on purpose. She was with Nathan now, no obstacles, no secrets, so what the hell was she doing lurking outside my place in the middle of the night? I snapped a photo of the car and sent it to a friend, asking him to pass it along to Nathan. Not long after, the Ferrari pulled away. And for a while, it didn't come back. I thought that was the end of it, until Nathan showed up at my door. I shouldn't be here, he began, but I've been thinking it over. I should explain. Claire wasn't there to bother you. She wanted to ask you to visit Grandpa, but after everything that happened, she's been too guilty to face you directly. I cut him off, my frown deepening. What's wrong with Grandpa? Nathan exhaled, his voice low. His health's been getting worse. He's been in the hospital for 2 weeks now. The doctors say, maybe a month, at most. By the time I got to the hospital, Claire was by his bed, spoon-feeding him. It had only been months since I last saw him, but Grandpa looked like a shadow of himself, thinner, paler, the light in his eyes dimmed. A heaviness settled in my chest, blurring my vision. Since my parents died, Grandpa had been the one who cared for me most. But after my divorce from Claire, I'd avoided seeing him, not wanting to risk running into her. I hadn't even known he was sick. I stepped closer, my throat tight. Grandpa. Ethan, you're here. His eyes warmed. Why are your eyes red? Has something happened? I shook my head, forcing the lump in my throat back down. The last thing I wanted was to upset him. He turned on Claire with a scowl. Did you do something to make Ethan mad again? Look at his face, he's furious. I expected her to protest. Instead, she glanced up at me, her expression tangled, unreadable. I drew in a long breath, steadied my voice, and turned back to him. No, Grandpa. She didn't make me angry. I just haven't seen you in so long. I missed you. I sat down beside the bed, looking at his frail frame, and the ache in my chest tightened until I could hardly breathe. Knowing he might only have a month left, I regretted every day I hadn't come sooner. After Grandpa finished his meal and drifted off to sleep, Claire and I stepped out into the quiet hallway. I turned to her, my voice low and cold. "Why didn't you tell me Grandpa was sick?" Her eyes darkened. She looked down. "We're divorced. I didn't want to trouble you. Don't you think that's selfish?" Grandpa watched me grow up. "Yes, we're divorced, but you and other people, those are separate things in my mind. I'm not the kind of man who punishes someone else for your mistakes." Claire pressed her lips together, but didn't answer. I drew in a breath, forcing my voice steady. "I know you don't want to see me. I feel the same. But Grandpa doesn't have much time left. I'm going to visit him every day. You can figure out the schedule." I didn't love Claire anymore, but I also couldn't stomach seeing her with Nathan right in front of me and pretending it didn't bother me. "I never said I didn't want to see you," she murmured. The vagueness in her tone made me frown. "Do whatever you want. Just make sure when I'm here for Grandpa, you and Nathan aren't in my face." She fell silent for a long moment. "Fine. Just text me before you come, and I'll make sure the time's clear." "Good." I took her number off my block list. After that, the only contact we had was the brief, practical texts letting her know when I'd be at the hospital. Nothing more. A month later, I was pushing Grandpa's wheelchair through the hospital garden when he suddenly said, "Ethan, there's something I want to tell you." I crouched in front of him, forcing a smile. "What is it?" In the past month, he'd never spoken to me with that kind of gravity. A gentle smile softened his face. "I know I don't have much time left. Having you here every day this past month, it's meant a lot to me." Panic welled up in my chest. I'd spent the month trying to act calm, but now the grief surged like a tide, threatening to pull me under. "Don't talk like that, Grandpa. You're going to get better." He shook his head, serene. "I know my own body. I've lived a long life. I have no regrets, except for you." My throat tightened. "I don't need you to say it, I know Claire wronged you. That's why I could never accept that man. You and Claire weren't meant to be, but I've always seen you as my grandson. My hope is that you'll find someone who truly loves you." "Let me finish," he said gently when I started to speak. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a bank card, and held it out to me. "Consider this a gift for your future wife. I doubt I'll live to see your wedding." The world blurred. I shook my head. "I can't take this." "Take it," he said firmly. "It's just an old man's blessing. If you refuse, I'll be angry." Under his insistence, I took the card. Only then did he smile, like a man who'd crossed something off his list. The deep lines on his forehead seemed to ease. At 11:15 that night, Grandpa passed peacefully. In that moment, I knew. The last person in this world who was truly my family was gone. I knew I should have been heartbroken. But instead, it was like my emotions had been stripped away, leaving me hollow. I just stood there, numb, as if none of it had anything to do with me. On the day of the funeral, Nina came with me. In the framed photo, Grandpa wore that same kind, gentle smile I'd seen 100 times before. But I knew, those moments were gone forever. Claire was dressed in black, her face pale and drawn, dark circles smudged under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. Nathan hovered beside her, steadying her every so often, as if she might collapse. After the funeral, I sank into a fog. I buried myself in work and avoided everything else. Until one day, Nina stormed into my apartment, yanked me up from the couch, her face tight with anger. "Ethan, Grandpa's gone. That's a fact you can't change. How long are you going to keep wallowing like this? He wouldn't want to see you like this." A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I know. I just can't make myself accept it. She gripped my shoulders, locking eyes with me, speaking each word with deliberate force. No one can accept losing someone they love. But we have to, because life doesn't stop. We have to keep going. I pushed her hands away, not wanting to talk. I understood everything she was saying. I just couldn't bring myself to care enough to act. Grandpa had treated me better than anyone since my parents died. And yet, because of Claire, I distanced myself from him. How lonely must he have been? But he never came looking for me, never sent Claire to bring me to him. And at the end, when he was barely holding on, he still made sure to leave me a gift. What had I done in return? I could have spent more time with him. I could have been there. But I didn't. The more I thought about it, the heavier it became, until the tears started spilling, unstoppable. Nina pulled me into her arms, her hand rubbing slow circles on my back, her voice soft. Cry, Ethan. Just let it out. Losing someone like that, it'll take a lifetime to make peace with it. But you have to understand, no one can stay with you forever. I broke then. My arms tightened around her, and the sobs tore through me. I knew she was right, people can't stay forever. But what gutted me was that I only seemed to value them after they were gone. And by then, it was always too late. I cried for a long time. But afterward, something inside me loosened. The constant weight in my chest lightened, even if only a little. Nina stayed with me all afternoon. When she saw I'd settled, her shoulders relaxed. Feels better, doesn't it? She asked gently. I shook my head. I'm still sad. But I know I have to move forward, because you're right. Grandpa wouldn't want me like this. That's all that matters, she said. Her eyes held nothing but warmth and quiet encouragement. Heat prickled at my cheeks, and my pulse stuttered. I turned my head quickly, searching for something to say. Suddenly, my stomach growled, loud enough to ruin the moment. Perfect. Just perfect. Nina blinked, then let out a small laugh. Why don't you rest on the couch for a bit? I'll make you something to eat. All right, I said, trying not to sound too grateful. She moved quickly in the kitchen, and within half an hour, she brought out a plate of pasta. It looked and smelled incredible, nothing like the culinary disaster I'd half expected. After washing my hands, I sat down at the table and glanced at her. Didn't know you could cook this well. When we finished, I stood and stopped her from gathering the dishes. I'll take care of it. You've already done more than enough today, I can't let you wash up, too. Nina smiled, a playful glint in her eyes. If you feel bad about resting on the couch, then make me a coffee. I saw a coffee machine here. I did have one, though it had been ages since I'd touched it. All right, I agreed, but I'll have to clean it first. I'll handle that, she said firmly. You just grind the beans. I gave in and opened the jar, scooping out the beans. As they hit the grinder, that rich aroma began to fill the air, and even I started craving a cup. By the time I'd brewed two, she was setting the last clean plate on the drying rack. Turning around, she smiled. I could smell it the whole time. I handed her a cup, feeling unexpectedly self-conscious. It's been a while since I made coffee myself. It might not be great. She took a sip, then her face went completely serious. I winced. Is it that bad? I can pour it out. I reached for the cup, but she pulled it away, holding it out of reach. Ethan, have you ever considered opening your own cafe? With coffee like this, you do well. The teasing spark in her eyes gave her away, and I realized I'd been had. You looked so grim, I actually thought it was terrible, I said, shaking my head. She laughed. I just wanted to mess with you. Childish, I muttered, but I was smiling as I carried my coffee to the couch. It had been so long since I'd felt this relaxed around someone. I'd almost forgotten what it was like. By the time we'd drained our cups, it was past 8. Nina stood, brushing off her hands. "It's getting late. I'll head out." "All right." After that night, over the next month, Nina and I found ourselves growing closer, step by step. I thought I'd never fall for another woman again. But lately, I'd felt it, that faint, restless pulse in a heart I'd sworn was dead. The next time I saw Claire was on my birthday. That evening, Nina had booked a table at a high-rise restaurant with a view of the city lights. She'd invited me to dinner, and over the past few weeks, things between us had been slowly heating up. We were right on the edge of something more, and I had a feeling tonight we might finally cross it. So I took my time getting ready. Sure enough, after dinner she told me to close my eyes. When I opened them again, she was standing in front of me, a small, elegant box in her hands. "Ethan," she said, "I was going to wait a while before confessing, but I can't anymore. Will you give me a chance? Let me be your girlfriend?" Her dark eyes locked on mine, steady and unblinking, as if they held 1,000 stars. "I know you've been hurt before," she went on, "and I know you're afraid of it happening again. But the one who didn't love you, that was her mistake, not love's. I want to show you that there's still beauty in the world. I want you to believe in loving someone again. Even if you say no now, I'll still stay by your side, until you're ready to walk toward me." Her words hit me hard. I could feel the sincerity in everything she'd done for me these past months. Maybe it was time I gave myself a chance. I was about to nod, when Claire came out of nowhere and slapped Nina hard across the face. Before I could react, the two of them were grappling, hands tangled in hair, a full-on fight breaking out right there in the middle of the restaurant. Nathan, standing a short distance away, looked stunned, his expression twisting into something dark as he froze where he was. I rushed forward, pulling them apart, shielding Nina behind me so Claire couldn't lay another finger on her. "You okay?" I asked her. Nina shook her head, wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and shot Claire a cold glare. "Claire, if you want to act insane, go check yourself into a psychiatric ward." "And tonight? I'm calling the cops." Claire gave a short, sharp laugh. "You think I'm afraid of you? I warned you to stay away from Ethan." The words made my brows knit tight. I turned on her, my voice low and cutting. "And what gives you the right to say that? We've been divorced for months. We're strangers now. Or do you need to see me miserable to feel satisfied?" Claire stared at me, wide-eyed, like she couldn't believe I'd said it. "Ethan, I just don't want you to get hurt. Do you have any idea how many boyfriends Nina went through in the UK? Over 10. I took a slow breath. She could have dated 100, it's still none of your business. And the person who hurt me most, wasn't it you?" Her face faltered. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Nathan's hand clamped on her sleeve. When she turned and saw him, something flickered in her expression. But in the end, she said nothing. I didn't bother looking at either of them again. I just led Nina straight out of there. And to the hospital. Once the nurse finished cleaning her wound, Nina looked straight at me. "I'm thinking of pressing charges, just to teach her a lesson. Unless, you still have feelings for her." I cut her off. "I haven't had feelings for her in a long time. Do whatever you think is right." "All right." She called the police. Before long, Claire and Nathan were both at the station. The cut on Claire's face had been treated, but her expression was dark, her body stiff as an officer led her away to give her statement. In the end, it was settled with Claire agreeing to pay Nina $500,000 in medical expenses and another $200,000 for emotional damages. When she walked out, her eyes locked on me and didn't let go. There was something in her stare, cold and unsettling, that made my skin crawl. Nina stepped forward, planting herself between us. "Claire," staring at my boyfriend like that? Not a good look. Boyfriend? The word dripped from Claire's mouth like it had been pulled from a bucket of ice water. Nina's lips curved into a slow smile. That's right. On the way here, he agreed to be with me. Do you have a problem with that? He could never love you, Claire said, certain, her tone like a blade of frost. Anger flared in my chest. I stepped out from behind Nina. Claire, you're not me. How would you know? Because other than me, you could never love anyone else. The truth is, I already love her. And I'm not pathetic enough to keep loving someone who trampled all over me. I didn't wait for her response. I took Nina's hand and walked away. She dropped me off at home that night, then left. The next morning, I opened my door, and nearly jumped. Someone was standing right there. When I focused, I saw it was Claire. My brows pulled tight. She had a cigarette between her fingers, the smoke curling around her face, blurring her expression. The air around her was steeped in something broken, like she was carrying her own storm. Claire, what the hell is wrong with you? Standing outside my door at the crack of dawn. Leave now, or I'm calling the cops. Maybe my tone was colder than I realized, because something in her expression flickered, like I'd actually hurt her. She crushed the cigarette under her heel and took 2 steps toward me, then stopped when she saw the tension in my stance. Ethan. I'm sorry. I just didn't know where else to go. The bitter look on her face almost made me laugh. If I'm not mistaken, you and Nathan are already engaged. Your wedding's around the corner. You've gotten exactly what you always wanted. What could you possibly be dissatisfied with? She gave a humorless smile. I thought being with Nathan would make me happy. But since I've been with him, I keep thinking about the times we had together. Stop. My voice cut through hers like ice. So what, you were with me thinking about Nathan, and now you're with Nathan thinking about me? It wasn't me she wanted, and it wasn't him either, she just couldn't let go of the habit of romanticizing her ex. And realizing I'd loved a woman like this for so many years. I felt sick to my stomach. Disgusted to my core. Her eyes filled with regret. Ethan, after Grandpa passed, I realized, you're the most important person to me. Nathan was just a whim. I got caught up in his passion, his energy, and that's how I let you slip away. I don't care if it was a whim or a mistake. We're divorced. Take your self-righteous feelings and get out of my sight. I never want to see you again. Once, I'd thought I'd spend my life with her. But she'd shattered that hope again and again, until there was nothing left but exhaustion and emptiness. That pain was more than enough for one lifetime. The moment I learned she'd faked bankruptcy just to force a divorce, whatever love I had for her had turned to ash. She didn't move. Her lips trembled, and after a few seconds, she spoke quietly. Ethan. I've never told anyone this, but those months we lived together in that tiny apartment, they were the happiest days of my life. Smack. My hand came down across her face. If she hadn't brought up that time, maybe I wouldn't have hit her. But the fact she could stand there and dredge up something so shameless. That was beyond forgiveness. Did she have any idea what that time meant to me? You think those were the happiest days of your life? Did you ever stop to think what it was like for me, working 3 jobs a day, too broke to even take the subway, walking miles between shifts? That time wasn't happiness for me. It was the darkest, most exhausting stretch of my life. Not because I was always working or on my way to work, but because I gave you everything, and you threw it on the ground and crushed it under your heel. If I could go back to the day we graduated, back to the moment you told me to wait for you, this time, I'd say no without hesitation. Something flickered in Claire's eyes, pain, regret. Her gaze was red-rimmed as she stared at me. I'm sorry, she said, her voice shaking. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. I know I hurt you. Hit me if you want, just, don't leave me. I'll do anything. Once, I would have given anything to see her like this, truly remorseful. Now, there wasn't even a ripple in my chest. Because I didn't care anymore. The wounds she left couldn't be undone, and I wasn't going to keep chaining myself to her ghost. Claire, it's not that I don't want you. You didn't want me. I'm just done standing in the same place, waiting for you to come back. That's all. If you keep following me, I'll call Nathan right now. She gave a bitter smile. The only one I care about right now is you. Her words had barely left her mouth when a voice laced with mockery came from behind her. My boyfriend doesn't need you caring about him. And for the record, I've got your little speech recorded. If this turns into a public mess, it won't do you or your company any favors. Claire's face went pale. She turned and saw Nina standing there. Nina, you don't deserve to be with Ethan. Nina ignored her, stepping up to wrap an arm around my waist. Her smile was cold. If I'm not good enough, who is? You? Don't forget, you've got a fiancé. A woman who eats from one bowl while staring into another deserves to be alone for the rest of her life. I can break off the engagement, Claire shot back. The one I love is Ethan. Nina's smirk didn't fade, but her grip on my waist tightened, just enough for me to notice. She was afraid, I realized. Afraid I might still have feelings for Claire. Then maybe, Nina said, her voice sharp, you should ask Ethan if he still wants you. In an instant, both women's eyes were on me. I frowned and looked at Claire. Her gaze was full of hope, careful and uncertain, just like mine had been when I'd loved her. But just as my hopes had once been crushed, hers were about to be, too. Claire, I don't love you anymore. Not even a little. Stop showing up and disrupting my life. Her face went slack, and she walked away like a ghost. Nina loosened her hold on me, her expression suddenly serious. How could you just open the door for another woman? What if she had bad intentions and accused you of something? Seeing the shadow in her eyes, I quickly explained, I didn't know she was out there. Besides, I'd known Claire for years. She wasn't the type to pull a stunt like that. From now on, check who's outside before you open the door. Actually, no. I'm getting you a security camera. Nina wasn't the type to drag her feet. She mentioned it in the morning, and by the time I came home from work that evening, it was already installed. Well? Not bad for your girlfriend, right? I nodded. It's fast work. And the camera's good, full view of everything outside. But I still don't think it's safe enough. Why don't I just move in with you? You know, to protect you. The spark in her eyes gave her away, and I shot her a look. Your real motive is written all over your face. She laughed. Fine, fine. Joking. My plan is to buy the place across from you. That way, if anything happens, I can be here in seconds. Seriously? Yep. I just haven't found the owner yet. Once I do, I'll make an offer. After hearing her plan, I started keeping an eye out to see if anyone visited the apartment across from mine. I even asked the building manager, but he refused to share any owner information, citing privacy policies. 2 weeks later, I finally learned who owned it. And it was the last person I expected. Claire. She'd bought it not long after I moved here. The thought alone irritated me. Did she really think this was some grand, romantic gesture? Engaged to Nathan on one side, showing up to disgust me on the other, did she think I didn't have limits? I took a deep breath and made sure word got to Nathan about Claire's little real estate purchase. Let's see how calm he stays after hearing that. Sure enough, Nathan came to see me not long after. The apartment across from yours is Claire's, yes, he said, but that doesn't mean anything. She bought it as our future marital home. We had no idea you lived opposite. Honestly, who checks to see who their neighbors are before buying a place, right? I just looked at him, expression flat, saying nothing. He didn't seem bothered by my silence. Later, when her grandfather got sick and she wanted you to visit him, she had someone check your address. That's when we realized you'd bought the apartment across from ours. After that, she left it alone. If you don't believe me, I can take you to see it, it's never even been renovated. No need, I said. I'm not curious. I'm just here to tell you, keep an eye on your fiancé. Nathan's mouth curved into a smile. Don't worry. We're doing great. Really? Then maybe you should take a look at this. I slid my phone across the table, showing him a still frame from my security camera, Claire standing outside my door all night. Nathan's face drained of color. Whatever's going on between you and Claire, I don't care, I said. But if she shows up at my door again, I'll call the cops. He said nothing, pale as paper. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, stood, and walked out. How he handled Claire after this was his problem, not mine. Divorced or not, there were still certain business events where I couldn't avoid running into her. A week after I'd shown Nathan the footage, Nina and I attended a gathering. And Nathan and Claire were there. The moment Nathan saw me, his smile faltered. His hand tightened around Claire's waist without him even realizing it. I noticed. And I couldn't help the twist of irony in my chest. When I'd been married to Claire, he'd look the same way every time we crossed paths. Jumpy, watchful, ready to shield her. Then people noticed Nina's hand in mine, and the teasing started. Look at you, Nina, turns out the crush paid off. Lucky girl. Man, last year I confessed to my first love and found out she was expecting her second kid. Still stings. Huh, I remember when Nina told me she liked Ethan. I told her to forget it. Back then, Ethan only had eyes for Claire. Who knew? Years later, she actually got him. The words landed like a stone in the middle of the room. And just like that, the chatter died. Every pair of eyes in the room turned toward the four of us. Claire and Nathan looked like they just swallowed glass. Nina leaned casually into my arm, smiling as she said, "That's right, and I'm grateful he gave me the chance." The crowd laughed, the tension easing for a moment, until someone piped up. "Do you still have feelings for your ex?" I rolled my eyes internally. Fishing for drama, obviously. "I've got a new girlfriend," I said flatly. "What do you think?" Nina's smile sharpened. "Ethan's with me now. Maybe next time, skip the pointless questions." Her words had barely landed when a sharp cry came from the corner. "Claire, your hand." Head swiveled. Claire stood there with the stem of a shattered wineglass in her palm, shards embedded deep, blood running freely down her wrist. Nathan reached for her, but she shoved him away. It was like she didn't even feel the pain. Her eyes stayed locked on me, unblinking. "Ethan," she said, voice trembling, "you were lying just now, weren't you?" There was hope in her gaze, and I had no idea what she thought she'd find. That after everything she'd done, I'd still grovel at her feet? I kept my face impassive. "Claire, I don't need to lie. If I still cared about her, I wouldn't have agreed to be with Nina. It would have been unfair to Nina, and to myself." "No." Her voice cracked, rising sharply enough to jolt the room into silence. Someone stood to calm her down, but one cold glance from her sent them backing off. She walked toward me, hurt and betrayal twisting her features, as if she were the one who'd been left behind. Nina stepped between us. "Ethan is my boyfriend now. Your fiancé's over there, if you want to lose it, take it to him. Get out of my way." When she made a move toward Nina, I stood up, anger flaring cold and sharp. "How long are you planning to keep acting like this?" She looked at me as though I'd just stabbed her, eyes rimmed red, on the verge of tears. "Ethan, you're mine. We grew up together, you're supposed to be with me. How can you fall for someone else?" You managed to fall in love with Nathan, didn't you? Or is it that in your mind, I'm supposed to spend my whole life pathetically loving only you? She shook her head fast, desperate. No, it's not like that. I love you too. If you'll just come back to me, I'll call off the engagement to Nathan. We can start over, please. Her voice was pleading, almost pitiful, but inside, I felt nothing. Whatever you do with Nathan, I will never get back together with you. Because now, when I look at you, all I feel is disgust. I took Nina's hand and walked out without looking back. I hadn't wanted to rip the mask off in public, but she'd left me no choice. And God help me, I couldn't figure out when she'd turned into someone I no longer recognized. At every gathering after that, if Claire and Nathan were invited, I turned down the invitation without a second thought. It didn't take long before they stopped trying to put us in the same room. If I was going to be there, they wouldn't call her, and if she was on the list, they didn't bother asking me. We simply stopped crossing paths. I thought that was the end of it. No more contact. No more drama. But then she went after Nina's company. I didn't realize it at first. The only thing I noticed was Nina working longer hours, coming home late night after night. When I finally dug into it, I found out Claire had been actively suppressing her business. And not through normal competition. This was the kind of malicious sabotage that scorches the earth for both sides. If it kept going, the only possible outcome was mutual destruction. It felt like she'd truly lost her mind. When Grandpa was still alive, she'd rein herself in, at least a little. But now she was like a rabid dog, snapping at anyone within reach. I hadn't planned on getting involved, but watching Nina wear herself down, and hearing rumors start to circulate that her company was on the verge of bankruptcy, I made up my mind. I had to see Claire. It had been 6 months since I'd last stepped into her office, and my heart was steady as stone. She lit up when she saw me, instantly instructing her assistant to bring out a plate of my favorite fruit. "Ethan, sit. What brings you here?" I took a seat on the couch. "I want you to stop going after Nina's company. This is only going to hurt both of you." The two companies had once enjoyed strong partnerships. Thanks to Claire's meddling, that was all but destroyed, and the two sides were openly hostile. Her smile froze, her eyes cooling as the seconds stretched. "You came here, for Nina?" "Yes." She didn't hesitate. "If you come back to me, I'll leave her alone. Claire, if you keep pushing like this, you'll bankrupt your own company too. Whitmore Group was built from the ground up by Grandpa. If he knew you destroyed it, can you imagine how much that would break his heart?" At the mention of Grandpa, something in her expression softened. I was about to press further when she lifted her gaze to mine. "Before he died," she said quietly, "Grandpa's biggest wish was for us to get back together. If it hadn't been for the bank card Grandpa pressed into my hand on his deathbed, and the words he'd spoken to me then, I might have actually fallen for her act. Claire, even if you wave Grandpa's dying wish in my face, I'm not going back to you. I stopped loving you a long time ago." "Not love me? That's impossible. You promised you'd wait for me forever." Her voice rose, sharp with disbelief. She stood abruptly, taking a step toward me. "Don't come any closer." I got to my feet and backed up fast, wanting space between us. But the movement seemed to ignite something in her. She strode toward me in a sudden, furious rush. I bolted for the office door, my hand barely brushing the knob before she grabbed me from behind, wrapping her arms around me in a vice-like grip, and, in the same motion, twisted the lock. The click echoed in the room. The door was sealed. I couldn't open it. Freak. I drew in a long breath, forcing myself to stay calm. It was too late to regret coming here. The only thing that mattered now was finding a way out. "Claire, calm down. Ethan, if you just come back to me, I'll let Nina go. What's so wrong about being with me? I'll treat you well, make it up to you 100, 1,000 times over. Let me go first. We can talk about it, but right now, the way you're holding me, it's making it hard to breathe. No. If I let you go, you'll run. I know you. I ground my teeth, cursing her to hell and back in my head, but on the surface, I had no choice but to soothe her. I promise I won't run. Just, let me go. I've got things I want to say to you too. Really? Yeah. Ethan, you'd better not be lying to me. She finally loosened her hold, but those dark eyes stayed locked on me, sharp and unblinking, giving me no opening to bolt. I sank back onto the couch, mind working furiously for a way out. It was like she could read every thought. Don't waste your time figuring out how to escape. I'm not letting you go. I was going to wait until Nina's company collapsed before taking you back, but now that you've walked right in on your own, I'm not letting you leave again. Claire, why can't you just let me go? If she had truly loved me, she wouldn't have fallen for Nathan in college, wouldn't have been willing to throw everything away for him. Later, we'd married by accident of circumstance, and I'd thought maybe I could win her back. But the moment Nathan came back into her life, she couldn't wait to divorce me. We were supposed to be together for life. It's not that I can't let you go, it's that you fell for someone else and tried to run from me. Her voice darkened, her expression twisting into something cold and dangerous. If our positions were reversed, if I were the one chasing you, and you finally turned around, you wouldn't be able to stand me walking away either. You'd hate it. It's not love, it's your pride. That's not true. She came closer, crouching in front of me. My whole body went taut, my eyes fixed on her with sharp wariness. If she tried anything, she wouldn't get away unscathed. In those 3 months I pretended to be broke, I realized how much you loved me. I started to love you back. I just didn't see it then. Now I know, you're the one I love. Give me a chance, and we can start over. Her gaze held nothing but hope. But all I could think about was waking up every morning to that same face. And feeling nothing but raw, inexplicable disgust. Yes, whatever I'd once felt for her had long since rotted into loathing. Loathing so sharp I couldn't imagine seeing that face for the rest of my life. Why couldn't we just part on decent terms? Why did she have to gut me first, then come back playing the part of the devoted lover, acting like we could simply pick up where we'd left off? The world doesn't hand out happy endings like that. And Nathan? I asked flatly. What's your plan there? Her expression froze, the answer caught in her throat. After a long beat, she said quietly, I owe him. I'll make it up to him. Claire, you are selfish beyond belief, and absolutely vile. She stared at me in disbelief. I let out a humorless laugh. Just looking at you makes me sick. Being with you again? I'd rather be dead. The words seemed to hit her like a blow. She went still, like she'd been carved from stone. I shoved past her and sprinted for the door. Only to have it slam open from the other side. Nina stood in the doorway, her face like ice. I blinked in surprise, and the next second, she yanked me behind her. Nina, Claire snapped, if you don't want your company to go under, you'll step aside right now. Nina's laugh was cold and sharp. Claire, you really think you can threaten me? I've already lined up new partners. I'm not afraid of you anymore. Claire's face twisted, her glare drilling into Nina, every inch of her radiating hostility. No matter what it takes, I'm taking Ethan back. Taking him back? Nina's voice cut like a blade. What is he to you, property? That's none of your business. He's my boyfriend. You tell me if it's my business. They were a breath away from lunging at each other when a trembling voice broke from behind. Claire. Didn't you say you wanted a real life with me? Then why are Ethan and Nina here? I turned to see Nathan, ashen-faced, staring at her with something between disbelief and heartbreak. Claire's expression wavered, but she didn't try to defend herself. "If you really can't let go of Ethan," Nathan said, his voice tight, "then I'll make it easy for you. I'll walk away." He turned before she could answer, striding out without a backward glance. Her face changed instantly, and she rushed after him. Nina didn't move, didn't even look at me at first, her jaw set in anger. "Don't be mad," I said quietly. "I came here to talk her out of going after your company. Seeing you working yourself to the bone. I couldn't just stand by." She drew a deep breath, her voice sharp with fury. "Are you stupid? You know she has her sights set on you, and you still walked in here? What if I hadn't shown up in time today, what then? I'd sent her a quick text on my way to Whitmore Group. I did message you. And I knew you'd have my back." Her eyes flashed. "Do something this reckless again, and see what happens to you." Back in the car, I asked Nina if she'd really found a new business partner. She nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Don't you believe in my abilities?" "I do," I said. "As long as it gets you through this rough patch, that's all that matters." The next morning, Nathan showed up out of nowhere. He looked nothing like the confident man I'd seen before, pale, slumped, the fight gone out of him. "Ethan," he said quietly, "I've lost to you. Completely." I felt no sympathy for him, but I wasn't in the mood to gloat either. "I never set out to beat you," I replied. "The only gamble I made was that she'd forget you someday, and that's the one I lost." A humorless smile tugged at his lips. "It doesn't matter anymore. I was planning to leave her anyway. She didn't try to stop me. Said she'd give me a payout to make it up to me." Something heavy dropped in my chest, a bad feeling taking root. Seeing my expression darken, he sighed. "I'm guessing you've already figured it out, she's lost it. One way or another, she's determined to be with you. You'd better watch your back." "If she just didn't love me, I could have lived with that," he went on. "But now she's using Whitmore Group to go after Nina. If she loses, the company will go under." So that was the grand romance between them, already crumbling. Nathan met my eyes, his voice flat. "Don't look at me like that. If she loved me, I'd stick by her even if it meant hardship. But she doesn't, so why should I stay and suffer?" I thought it over and understood. For Nathan, taking the money and walking away really was the best move. "Thanks for telling me," I said. "I'll be careful." That very afternoon, I moved into another apartment. Staying where I was just didn't feel safe anymore. If Claire decided to sneak in while I was asleep, who knew what she might do? Noticing my unease, Nina wrapped her arms around me and said it would all be over soon, that she wouldn't give Claire the chance to hurt me. Even after I moved, I kept my old place's security camera feed up on my phone. Sure enough, Claire showed up. She waited outside my door the entire night. When she realized I wasn't coming home, she finally left. I didn't even bother going into the office. I stayed inside all day. It wasn't until 2 weeks later, when Nina came to tell me Whitmore Group had gone bankrupt and that Claire would never bother me again, that I finally let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for months. Claire's obsession with taking Nina down had backfired spectacularly. Her reckless moves had infuriated several major shareholders. Combined with the company's plummeting stock price, many of them dumped their shares entirely. Still, she refused to back down. In the end, her stubbornness snapped Whitmore Group's lifeline, and the company collapsed. Even knowing that, a part of me hesitated. "You're sure she doesn't have something else planned?" "No," Nina said. "One of her competitors had her legs broken. She's in a wheelchair for the rest of her life, and I'm not giving her another shot at you." I felt no pity. Only the certainty that she'd earned every bit of it. After the divorce, she could have built a quiet life with Nathan and avoided all of this. But greed had driven her to gamble with both the company and her future, and she'd lost it all. After a moment's thought, I dug out the bank card Grandpa had given me on his deathbed and handed it to Nina. This is the money he left me. I've never been sure what to do with it. Transfer a sum to Claire every month, enough for her to live on. Nina nodded. All right. I didn't think about Claire after that. Once she'd only pretended to be bankrupt to force a divorce, now it was real. Maybe she could finally understand what it felt like for me back then. But it didn't matter anymore. She was just another page in my story, one I'd turned for good. From here on, I'd walk forward with the person I loved, and never look back.
Next is Claire's perspective. For as long as I can remember, Ethan has been a part of my life. When we were little, he was like a fluffy white marshmallow, impossible not to like. Everyone adored him. So did I. People used to say that when we grew up, we'd get married. I once asked my mother what marriage meant, and she told me it was when two people spent their whole lives together. Later, we started school and met a new friend, Nina. The three of us became inseparable, walking to school together, bringing treats from home to share every day. I thought we'd always be that close, the three of us. But in middle school, I suddenly noticed something. Nina liked Ethan. A pang of panic hit me. Nina was kinder than I was, prettier too, and Ethan had told me more than once that she was better than me in a lot of ways. I'd never taken it seriously before. But if he liked her back, what then? So I started flirting with him, casually, deliberately, and saw how his cheeks would flush. That was all the confirmation I needed. Relief washed over me. He liked me, not her. The next step was to create distance between him and Nina. Once the two of us drifted apart from her, Ethan naturally chose me. 3 became 2. I didn't feel the slightest regret. He was mine alone again. On the day I left for college, I hugged him at the airport and warned him, seriously, almost fiercely, not to fall for another girl. He kept that promise. I didn't. At university, I met Nathan, poor in money but rich in spirit. He was nothing like Ethan. Ethan was like a flower grown in a greenhouse, sheltered and delicate. Nathan was a wildflower clinging to the edge of a cliff, stubbornly rooted, blooming against the wind. The kind of beauty that stirred both admiration and a fierce urge to protect. When I realized I was drawn to him, I tried to ignore it. I failed. My feelings for him grew until they consumed me. I didn't know how to tell Ethan I'd fallen for someone else. But he was too perceptive not to notice. Slowly, he stopped seeking me out, started keeping his distance. At first, I felt guilty, but the thrill of being with Nathan soon drowned out whatever guilt I had left. When I was with Nathan, I completely pushed Ethan out of my mind. If we hadn't had that breakup right before college graduation, I think I might really have married Nathan. Back then, Nathan didn't know my family was wealthy. I urged him to come back to New York with me, but he insisted on taking a job in Chicago. We fought, loud, bitter, and in the heat of it, he broke up with me. Then he booked a ticket and slipped off to Chicago without telling me. When I found out, I was furious, but I still wanted to fix things. I bought a ticket to follow him. And then, at the airport, I got a call from Grandpa. Ethan's parents had been in a car accident. Both gone. I went home. Ethan was in a dark place then, barely holding himself together. I couldn't just leave him and go chasing after Nathan. By the time Ethan was finally starting to come out of it, I saw a photo on Nathan's Instagram. He was sitting across from a beautiful woman. In the comments, a friend asked if he was seeing someone new. He said yes. Later I learned it wasn't real. He'd only posted it because I hadn't come to make up with him. He'd been too proud to reach out himself, so he tried to provoke me into confronting him, planning to tell me then that it was just to get my attention. But that moment never came. I never asked, and that was the end of us. I spiraled for a while after that, drinking too much, too often. Ethan always came to pick me up, and that first night we crossed the line, I knew it was him. I just couldn't bring myself to admit I'd stopped loving Nathan, so I claimed I'd mistaken him for someone else. When Grandpa used that night to pressure me into marrying Ethan, I was resentful at first. But I told myself, Nathan and I were over, and marrying Ethan wasn't the worst thing. At least it would make him happy. When I slid the ring onto his finger, his eyes were wet. I thought he must have been overjoyed. We settled into a calm life after that. Sometimes I'd plan little surprises for him, and when I saw that unguarded happiness on his face, I thought, maybe this wasn't so bad after all. Then Nathan came back. He told me he'd never been with anyone else, that he'd been waiting for me all along. But when I didn't go to him, he decided he had no choice but to come find me himself. When I learned he'd quit a high-paying job in Chicago and returned to New York just to be with me, I was moved. I didn't hide the fact that I'd married Ethan. At first, Nathan was hurt, crushed, even, and said he was leaving. I took him to the airport, but at the last moment, I couldn't stop myself from hugging him, begging him not to go. He stayed, and I didn't know how to tell Ethan I wanted a divorce. I didn't want to hurt him, but I also couldn't bring myself to turn my back on Nathan. After thinking about it for a long time, I came up with a plan: pretend to go bankrupt, then let Ethan be the one to ask for the divorce. That way, I wouldn't have to feel like I'd wronged him. What I didn't expect was for Ethan to grit his teeth and stick it out for 3 whole months. Watching him work from morning until late at night, so exhausted he'd sometimes fall asleep in the shower, I felt both touched and guilty. More than once, I almost told him the truth. But every time the words reached my lips, they'd die there. I knew I was wrong, but by then I didn't know how to undo it. All I could do was keep going down the wrong path. And then, Ethan found out on his own. He asked for the divorce, just like I'd wanted. But instead of relief, I felt empty. After the divorce, I tried not to think about him. But when I was with Nathan, I kept seeing Ethan's smile in my mind. I thought I was losing my mind. Then he started seeing Nina. And I nearly did lose it. How could he fall in love with someone else? How could he be with her? I threw myself into trying to pull him away from Nina, certain that if I could just get him back, he'd eventually love me again. Because we'd grown up together. We were the most important people in each other's lives. At least we used to be. I went after Nina's company with everything I had. The shareholders tried to stop me, but I refused to back down. I couldn't. In the end, my obsession drove Whitmore Group into bankruptcy, and one night, men sent by a rival company broke my legs. The rest of my life will be spent in a wheelchair. I've lost my pride, and I've lost the only man I ever truly loved. Nina came to see me once after it all fell apart. She handed me a bank card and said it was from Grandpa, money he'd left for Ethan before he died. Ethan never touched it. Instead, in my lowest moment, he gave it to me. He's always been that kind, and I was never worthy of him. Now, all I can wish is for him to spend the rest of his life in happiness and peace, even if none of it has anything to do with me anymore.